Kaiju punching their way through a game of telephone. Just as we expected. Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we are going to take a fully spoilery look at Kaiju number 8, Chapter 106, wherein we might get to see Kafka punching his way to victory with the help of solid causality. This is the study of cause and effect. It is the basis of modern science and a core element of good writing. A story with good causality is the opposite of a story that is a disjointed mess. It means that everything that happens in episode 10 or episode 100 is the logical result of the plot devices, world building, and real-world extrapolation of what was introduced in episodes 1 and 2. If the causality is good, then two fascinatingly opposite things can happen in a story. One, your audience will get much better at speculating on what will happen because what happens is logical. And the plot twists, when they come, will hit like emotional sledgehammers. Think about it. If your expectations are reasonable and they have been met again and again and again, that seventh wave, that one that's significantly different, it's going to hit all the harder, especially if it too is logically consistent in the story. Now, we are going to get into the spoilers, so go check out the links below the video to get yourself a copy of my book, Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, a collection of short, absurd science fiction stories. Now, you have been warned. Let's get on to the spoilers. Let me take you back around 13 days before Chapter 106 dropped. I had finished my script for the full spoiler version of my review of Chapter 105, and, like you do, I trotted on over to YouTube to watch me some reviews. I didn't watch anybody else's reviews. I don't do that until I finish the script for my full spoiler video, so I know that I'm giving my opinions and not someone else's. Among others, I headed on over to Doffy, Daze to get their take, and they did not disappoint. Doffy made one really good point that stuck out to me, because I'd been giving it some serious thought too. See, Kafka trained in the Defense Force Squadron-style combat technique, the technique that Director General Hoshina himself perfected from whatever previous state it was in. Kaiju number 9 had absorbed the good Director General. Therefore, Kaiju number 9 has integrated all of that knowledge of the technique. So that would put Kafka in a rough place in this upcoming battle. I did not disagree with the concept. Clearly, Kaiju number 9 not only has a Director General's combat experience, he has a Director General's memory of previously fighting Kaiju number 8. This is a clear advantage, but not necessarily an overwhelming advantage, so I politely disagreed in a comment. As long-term followers of my deep lore will know, I studied Kung Fu for several years. And many great teachers do, Sifu Bronson has his own favorite pet peeve and hobby horse that he likes to get up on, and it was this. Everyone wanted to know what style Sifu Bronson taught, and he would take a long, calming breath and tell them that he didn't teach a style. He had studied under 4 different Grand Masters of Kung Fu, each of them having their own style. He had lived in a Buddhist temple learning Kung Fu from the monks for over half a year. From this lifetime of work and study, Sifu Bronson had indeed developed his own style, but he never taught that to his students. You see, his style was a combination of everything he had learned, of all of his influences, of his life growing up on the very wrong side of the tracks, of climbing mountains and riding horses, of nearly dying from organ failure, of years of professional kickboxing, of being a man of middle height and average strength. Even if he tried, it would be impossible to teach his style to anyone, let alone the seniors who came in to improve their joint structure, the tiny girls who came in for the kiddie classes. Each of us students would naturally form our own style over time, from our own experiences, from the shape of our own body, the fluidity of our own joints. The spry little men who could do a backflip before they even started training, they learned the same things from Sifu Bronson as the giantess of women who could barely reach her kicks off the floor because of congenital joint issues, but who could land blows with the force of a pile driver. Each one of them learned the same things from Sifu Bronson, but their individual styles of kung fu that grew out of this were profoundly different, both from each other and from Sifu Bronson. So what did Sifu Bronson teach if he didn't teach his style? Why did people keep coming to him if it wasn't for his style? Sifu Bronson taught a vocabulary of movement. In language, we all learn the same words, the same grammar, but how we choose to use them defines our exact voice. You will see that Doffy, Daze, and I, for example, speak the same language. We probably have very similar vocabularies. We use all the same words, even much of the same slang. But we have very, very different voices in our videos. There is no way, looking at a transcript of our videos, not even hearing our voices, just looking at the typed words, that you would mistake mine for theirs or theirs for mine. Also, they're two different. Doffy Daze is a YouTube channel for two different people, so there's that. In some ways, everyone who learns a martial art learns the same words, the same language. No matter what martial art you're looking at, there are around half a dozen each of different kicks, punches, blocks, and locks. Unless you're Bruce Lee's son and you've got the flexibility and power to do the scorpion kick practically, but that's just one kick. The concept here is that all martial arts are comprised of mostly the same vocabulary. The massive differences come in the near infinite ways you can put them together. See, you don't train style, you train these movements, these vocabularies. For instance, under Sifu Bronson, I trained in the movement, the martial arts word, uppercut, which required many repetitions of the same basic lower body training movements that we see Kafka doing in the manga. And I assure you that Sifu Bronson's style was nothing like the Defense Force Squadron style combat. And whether or not this is said, this in the manga, this is how martial arts training works. So, how does all this tie into Kaiju number 8 going up against Kaiju number 9 at a disadvantage? So Doffy Daze and I are talking, and I said to Doffy Daze that while Kaiju number 9 did have all of Director General Hoshina Maya's memories, Kafka did not learn the vocabulary of movements of the squadron style directly from ISO. Rather, Vice Captain Hoshina had studied the squadron style, which is basically unarmed hand-to-hand brawling technique, perfected by a near giant of a man who favors straight-up brawling techniques. But it was Vice Captain Hoshina who learned it. However, this was on top of Vice Captain Hoshina already having mastered the Hoshina style that we've seen since early chapters, a completely different martial art developed by Kaiju Slayer in the era of swords when they did not have giant punching machines like weapon number 2. The style would by nature be about using your smaller size, your speed and agility to use force multipliers, i.e. swords, to your advantage. It was a style as different as possible from the squadron style while still being a martial art. On top of that, Shiro Hoshina is a small guy compared to most men, but especially compared to his own family and Hoshina Maya. This would mean that Soshiro's personal style is going to be distinctly, dramatically different from the giant of a bruiser Hoshina Maya. Then Hoshina has to take the style and teach it to Kafka, and Kafka has to learn it. What Hoshina would be presenting would already be dramatically different from what Iso knew, and Kafka being larger than Soshiro, but not nearly so large as Iso, and trained to consider tactical analysis of kaiju anatomy overall his entire life, would bring his own perspective, would form his own distinct style naturally. Kafka is not going to be fighting anywhere the same way that Hoshina Maya is. And this is what I pointed out, but what I was focusing on was the differences that would exist, that would develop between what Kaiju number 9 harvested from Iso's brain and what Kaiju number 8 would present that would occur just naturally as a result of this game of martial arts telephone. You remember that game where you whispered something in someone's ear and it went down the line, people passing it on without hearing the original thing, and what was said at the end was completely different? That's the game they're playing, martial arts telephone. But then Doffy took my idea and took it even further, pointing out and noting that Hoshina was likely to deliberately put his own twist on the matter because they know that the Director General's been absorbed. And so we two channels happily nerded out for a bit and then went our separate ways. 2 weeks later, the chapter drops, and lo and behold, Matsumoto has done exactly what we discussed. Hoshina has slightly altered the vocabulary of movement of the squadron style by literally putting what Doffy suggested, a twist on the third form of the attack. I immediately thought of Doffy and pointed it out in our comments thread, and he responded that I too had been his first thought when he read that chapter. Now, why were we able to predict this with such accuracy? Going back to the beginning of the video, causality. Matsumoto writes his stories to be reflections of reality. Nothing in the story so far has come out of nowhere. In the first scene of the very first chapter of the manga, Matsumoto established that the square-cube law doesn't apply in this universe. We can, in fact, have giant organic life forms roaming the land. However, other than that one difference, this world follows the rules that govern real-world scientific precision. Kaiju number 8 was able to put a twist on his attack of Kaiju number 9 in this chapter because it is only logical that Kaiju number 9 would be prepared for Iso's attacks, and it is logical that Hoshina, who is the tactical brains of the Defense Force's top division, would be able to figure this out without breaking a sweat, and that he would be able to develop a workaround using that core element of his personality that we've seen, his family heritage. The story in Kaiju number 8 logically follows from what came before because Matsumoto is a good author creating a good story, which makes a profoundly satisfying experience for the readers. But what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Do you find the twist ending to this chapter as delightful as Doffy, Daze, and I did? Go check out his channel, or go check out our comment thread, leave a comment below this video telling me what you think, hit that like and subscribe button, and peace out, my wonderful viewers.
Drake McCarty's leg was shattered, deep in the wilderness. As the flash flood closed over him, something alien pulled him from the waters. A military base that shouldn't exist. An ancient warrior with secrets of his own. Drake returns to his family with a whole leg and the burden of a secret he doesn't understand. In the forest around them, someone is watching, and something followed him home. Flying Sparks. 90,000 words of science fantasy adventure. The first novel in the Dying Embers universe is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and from the author as a signed copy. Get your copy now and step into a world where dragons walk the forest, aliens lurk on the mountain, and things go boomp in the night.
Escape into another world with the writings of author Betty Adams. Two worlds, one of utter absurdity, one of dramatic tension, both alike in aliens absolutely astounded by human behavior. Humans are weird, short, absurd science fiction stories. Flying sparks, dragons, aliens, and things that go boomp in the night.
Books available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and at authorBettyAdams.com for a signed copy.